So hello and welcome back to Flip the Switch. This is the show that is dedicated to the multifaceted and multi-talented. And we're all about every week chatting to a new guest about where they are on their journey to finding a dream career. And today I'm joined in the studio by Zooey. Welcome, Zooey.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. How are you?
I'm good. I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I'm tired. January was a very busy, very long month. I feel like the start of a new year is always quite exhausting and difficult.
What era are you in right now?
Oh my God.
Hot girl resting era?
Not resting. Certainly not resting. What
Hustling.
era am I in? I don't know. I feel like right now I'm in like a kind of a purgatory era.
Okay.
It's like I'm sifting through a lot of different things, but with the intent of having some clarity.
That's a really good era to be in, actually.
I think so.
I think it's really freeing.
Well, also you can't have like the good bits and the fun and the smoothness without like the rough and like the peakness and the confusion first. It's like it just doesn't work that way.
It's so true, because I've been learning about happiness and how happiness just is so at one with pain. And everything you do when you look back, actually, like the worst like times of my life revolve around the happiness came out of the pain,
right?
And the idea came out of the pain, which I'm now like channeling. Actually, a bit of challenge, a bit of hardship isn't the worst thing in the world.
Well, it's that classic thing, isn't it, where it's like if we were just happy all the time, would we notice?
True. You actually wouldn't be able to feel emotion, really, if everything's like that.
You need stark contrast. It's like eating. If you like only ate sugary foods forever, it's like, how would you know that it was tasty or good or special? It's like you need like salty and sour and bitter, and then it's like, oh wow, this is so sweet.
It's
how
like
delicious.
Variation. And speaking of variation,
yes,
you're a very varied person.
I am indeed.
And so let's get straight in and actually talk about every single side. What do you do?
So I do a variety of things. I am a creative director and work as a creative consultant in music for Warner Records and also for Black Butter, which is a label at Sony, and work with a myriad of artists across their campaigns, doing everything from like stills, moving imagery, music videos, styling, live shows, etc. I'm a broadcaster, so I have a monthly show on Foundation FM, which is an interview-based show speaking to different creatives and people who I really love about their life and work. I'm a DJ. I DJ with an incredible crew of longtime best friends called Prestige Pack, which is made up of myself, Lil C, Architect and Handsome Rob, and I also DJ solo. And I DJ as Lagoon Femshayma, who is a kind of alter ego of mine. But more just a kind of an expression of my creativity. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And then I do like an odd bit of kind of like presenting and hosting. I do some hosting stuff for Dazed. We went to Eurovision last year and it was one of the highlights of my year. It was so much fun. And then honestly, anything else that people want me for. Like I don't really like if you've got a check,
you'll bring it.
Let me know. What do you want to do?
The many hyphens. I love it so much.
Yeah.
You were described as a creative chameleon.
Okay.
Which I'm stealing that.
Please.
I think it's so good. It's a really beautiful way for you to actually, I don't know if you use it. Is that on your CV? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if that's on my personal CV, but I love that somebody described me thusly. That's so nice.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And should we start where actually the creative side of you came from and how you've grown that as a career?
Sure. Well, I mean, in terms of, I suppose when I think about what has kind of like led me to where I am now in my career, I think it was studying art and history of art at school. That was definitely just kind of like a general visual world. And I have this thing where I get very obsessive over things and then kind of like need to constantly kind of take in more and more and more. So it was like when I was 16, 17 years old, I started doing history of art as an A-level, and that was it. I was just hooked. And so I would walk to school in the morning, but I would be like reading art books in the morning on the way to school. So, and it's the same with fashion, it's the same with makeup, it's the same to a certain extent with music, or now with film. It's like my brain just has this very obsessive quality, and so if there's something that I hook into and it's like I got really into last year for like a month. I got really into the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Did you?
Like 10 years late. But I was like, oh fuck it, like I'll give it a go. And then I watched it and I was like, this is fab. Like
I need
this
to
is
watch
so
it
major.
then.
Oh no, it's great. It's like it's oh god, and now I'm gonna forget it's David Fincher, who is like a super interesting director. And and I just for some reason just got really into like the mythology of the girl with the dragon tattoo and David Fincher for like a month, and then one day it just like it disappears and it goes away again.
That's the same with me. It's the hyper focus, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
real. And you will just like, for me, I wanted to be a chef for a little bit.
Right.
And it got to the point where I nearly signed the dotted line of creating my own restaurant. Like I was that close.
Oh my god.
And then I was like, wait a sec, this is not you, Shana. Like, where are you going with
What
this?
was that inspired by, do you think?
I think like I do love cooking, like genuinely as just a bit of, I see it's therapy very much, of that unwinding. But it led to, I went to New Orleans. Have you ever been to?
No, but I've heard amazing things about the
Beautiful.
food.
Yeah, lovely culture, food, drink, everything. And I wanted to bring that to the UK and actually spread the word of just how inclusive it is actually as well. Like when you bring music into it, and the jazz music and the history is stunning. And I wanted to do that, and I got carried away with the passion. So I get it. It's, you get that hyper focus. You focus on something, and then there's a time when you're like, is this for me right now?
Well, yeah, 100%. And it's just like going back to those things that I was initially inspired by. It was like, I think the thing is that I didn't have a name for what I wanted to do. It was just very much like, I'm really interested in all of these things. How do I remember like trying to explain it to my mum once, because I became really obsessed with nightlife kind of in my late teens, early 20s, and specifically the kind of like the club kid scene in New York, and the kind of like the parallel scene that was happening in London. It's like throughout the 80s and 90s, and Lee Bowery and Blitz Kids and Suzanne Barch parties, and then the parties that were happening in kind of like the mid 2010s in New York and London, like the Loverboy parties that Charles Jeffrey threw, and On Top, and all of these incredible events, Fight Club in New York City, all these amazing parties where people would get dressed up and go. And all of the creativity, the fashion and the music and the art, and like the creativity from all those scenes, it was something I wanted to be a part of, but I didn't know how to articulate that or what that actually was. And so I'd explain to my mum, I was just like, yeah, mum, like, she was like, well, what do you want to do like with all this stuff? And I was like, oh, like I want to go to the Life Ball in Vienna, because I saw that they would go to
specific as well.
So specific, but it was also like I didn't understand that there was like, I just saw it as like a scene and then what people in the scene did, but I didn't actually understand the kind of like the in-between bit, like the work and everything that you like.
And the various strings that actually create that thing.
Yes.
And because like even the art, the fashion, the music, that all comes together. How did you take that to the next step then and turn that into a career? From passion and...
I came back to London from uni in quite bad shape, to be honest with you. And for a couple years really struggled in London. I ended up having to go completely sober, and I'm still 5 years later, I'm alcohol free and cocaine free, and have been since 2019. And that basically I was in just like the worst place ever. I remember it being like the 3rd of January 2019 and calling my dad and from this awful job that I was working at the time, and was just like, I'm going to be sober for a year. And he was like, okay. It's like, when you make a decision like that, you need someone to hold you to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, I know my dad's going to hold me to it. And once I'd made that decision, a switch kind of clicked. And I was very lucky that my best friend Cheska was working at both XL and Young Turks at the time, and she had met a creative director there called Imogen Snell, who still runs an incredible creative direction studio, and she needed an assistant. And so I went for coffee with her, and I had an art historical background and an art background, and also this kind of like nightlife background, and was super interested in all of that stuff, and had quite a good knowledge of a lot of kind of what was going on. And she was like, well, come and work for me.
Amazing.
And so that was how I kind of first started doing creative direction. And then I left her studio at the beginning of 2023 and went fully freelance.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been doing kind of creative direction since 2019. So I'm in my whatever, it's like 5th year now.
Yeah. How many years ago?
As many years as I've been sober, I've been doing creative direction.
Incredible. And out of that hardship, and I appreciate you being so honest about it, because these things do really shape who we are, and actually you need to kind of like check yourself and say, this is time for me to change, and it's only us that have that responsibility, but it's like being around amazing people that can support you through that and like trust you and help you, because it's not easy to do something like that, especially in music and the nightlife area. I know that there's that big culture of which is the opposite.
Oh my God, you see it all the time. This is the thing. Nightlife is the most headless environment ever. That's why it's so fab. You know, it's like hedonism is so important to society, to culture. Everybody needs moments to release and to gather together and to bond and to like make memories and to meet new people. It's like those things are like fundamental to the human experience, which is why nightlife is so important. But obviously that also comes with a lot of other stuff as well. And when I first started working in nightlife, you know, when I first started doing drag and whatever, I was I was like a fucking mess. I was a mess. And
was it because it felt really exciting?
Yeah.
Because you want to go to 100, don't you?
Well, that's the thing. It was like a mixture. It was like I just started doing drag, and so that was really exciting for me. And I had all of that kind of just like blind, doe-eyed sort of like enthusiasm. But I was also slowly developing a problem with alcohol at the same time. And becoming, and a lot of it kind of came from really losing a lot of confidence that I had. And, you know, replacing that confidence with something else. And that thing was like alcohol and drugs. And so, you know, it's like it's like having a crutch.
No, 100%, because you see it a lot in the music industry. Like when I first started DJing, because I started DJing at 16.
Oh, wow.
Super early, and I had older friends that were then dabbling in drugs early, and you're exposed to it actually quite a young age. And I found like my drinking and just like going mad, I'd say, era was early, very early. And actually when you go to uni and everyone starts experimenting, that was when I was like, I'm done with it. I don't need it anymore. But when you are DJing a lot and you get a rider and everything's exciting and cool and you want to try and test and play, but then there does become a point when you're like, hold up, like this has got to stop as well, because music as well, it being a job, it being fun and a passion, all these different things in one, I find the boundaries are just so blurred.
It's almost a cliche at this point, but I think, you know, remember that if you work in nightlife, you work. So at a certain point, even if your job is to party, you have to treat it like a job. Because if that's the way you're going to make your money, like if that's the way you're going to sustain yourself, and people do, people have, you know, have the most incredible successful lives based off working in nightlife, but that's probably because they treat it like work. It doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fun, but I've seen so many people go by the wayside because they were working in nightlife, and specifically all of like the ego and everything that comes with working in nightlife, where it's like you kind of become like a little mini club celebrity in your own right. And it's like if you zoom out just a tiny bit, sweetheart, nobody knows who you fucking are. You're famous to 200 gay guys on a Friday night. Congratulations. Like that does not a true star make.
But it's feeding the ego though, right?
Exactly.
And do you know what? I never forget when a lecturer once said this. They said context is everything. And that is like one of the best pieces of advice, motivation in life, because when you zoom out, you're like, yeah, am I? Are you? You're not. And actually that drive then makes you move on and grow and get better. Because if you are in a bubble of like everyone knows you, you're like, do I even need to? You can relax a bit. Yeah. And you need a bit of challenge.
I think also, you know, I still believe that nightlife is like one of the most important things kind of like culturally going on in this country and around the world. I still think that it's a place for kind of like innovation and change. We all know by now that is where the best fashion and music and culture in general comes from. It starts in nightlife, it starts in clubs, it starts in places where people throw themselves together. That's just the way it is. But you know, you do also have to kind of look after yourself too.
Yeah. And I think that's where we'll get into it. I think it's time to flip the switch, because I think we've talked a lot about nightlife already. And I think let's just keep going and get straight into music. So let's go into Lagoon Femshayma and just a little bit about that. Where did she come from?
Well, Lagoon Femshayma wasn't always my name, first of all.
Okay.
I had 2 drag names beforehand. The first was Cherry Gardens, which was after the Vibes Cartel song Summertime.
Love it. Okay.
And the reason for that was I was like, you know, love Vibes Cartel, love the music, think the music's great. My friend who I mentioned before, Cheska, she's a Vibes Cartel connoisseur. Been going out in queer nightlife spaces for over a decade. I always hear Vibes Cartel out in the club because it's fantastic. But Vibes Cartel is a notorious homophobe. So in my head, I was like, well, what better way to kind of dig back at Vibes Cartel than to be a drag queen and name myself after one of his songs? Wow. The idea of him like being in prison and hearing that a drag queen in London had called themselves Cherry Gardens after Summertime and being irked by that, to my mind, was always like quite a fun, stupid thing. Then I kind of got over it as like, there's a drag queen's called Cherry. I'll move it along. So it was Diamond Garden. Again, it kind of worked, but I was just a bit like, I was like, why the garden? I don't, it's like, it just, whatever. It makes no sense.
You weren't feeling it. Okay.
No. And I'd always been blue. The character had always been blue. So I was like, Lagoon. Should have just left it in hindsight at Lagoon. But I was like, oh, I'm a drag queen, so I need a surname. Like, why?
You need a passport. Apparently.
Do you know what I mean? Like, who needs why are all these rules existing? And then why did I have to pick a name that a lot of people can't spell or say? I was at like 3 o'clock in the morning, fucked up with my friend Albie, who was going out with a guy at the time who we used to joke had like a masculinity complex. We used to be like, "You're such a femshamer, you're such a femshamer," and then we were like,
it clicked.
We were like, Lagoon Femshayma, like that's the name. And then it stuck. And then people now come up to me and they're like, oh my God, Lagoon Femshayma, and explain to them the name. And they're like, oh, like Femshayma.
That is why.
Oh, like that's why. I think people just thought I just like had a stupid surname for fun.
Yeah, because I did wonder like what the reason was for like bringing those words together.
Femshayma.
I love it. That actually makes it so much more exciting.
Because it's also like you can't be a femshamer if you're literally cross-dressing.
Right, exactly. So, but then it's similar to the original in a way.
Yeah, kind of.
You have this hidden meaning.
And well, it's antagonism.
Yeah.
It's how can I low-key piss people off. It's like I saw my friend, who everybody should go and follow, Club Queen Michelle Ajama, the Michelle Ajama Show on Instagram. She's amazing. She went to Adonis with a cardboard sign that said no bottoms on it, and then danced throughout the whole of Adonis with this sign saying no bottoms, which is obviously a huge joke.
Yeah.
And then the next day, Adonis gets all of these messages from like humorous Clapham gays being like, we just want to say that the fact that you let somebody with a no bottom sign dance around the club, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what happened to irony?
Interesting.
What happened to sarcasm? Like, what happened to taking the mick out of something?
So people
like,
are taking it way too seriously, basically.
And it's just, it's like the same with femme-shaming. It's the same with, it's like,
we're having fun. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Let us have our fun.
It's not that deep.
Yeah. And so with Lagoon, let's talk about a bit about this idea of an alter ego.
Okay.
It's something that I've just been trying to understand, to be honest, a little bit recently, because I think I've had one for a long time. Being South Asian and just growing up around that culture, which can be really claustrophobic, and also trying to be a creative at the same time. Like, I did the whole study a law degree, fit in a box, but I was also like, there's a part of me that doesn't want to do that and be that, and I'm so much more than that. And so I had to break out in some form, and I shunned like this South Asian culture. I'd be like, what do people call it? An Oreo, and just like hide and pretend and like be very white in everything I did. And so the version of the alter ego actually came for me out of negative experiences and just trying to break out, but also fit in a box and everything. And so I think that ego's developed out of that. And then you have to play like acts in a way in every single version of who you are, and that's exhausting. That was. I want to hear about like what you think about Lagoon, and whether is that a different side of you, or is that you? How have you felt with that and growing that?
Well, the way I always approached Lagoon was that it was effectively, in hindsight now, especially having done creative direction for so long, but it was basically a way for me to, it was basically my first creative direction project. It was like, what would happen if I took all of these references and all of things that I love in music and art and makeup and fashion and basically applied them to myself, because I was the only person who I could apply them to. And so that was kind of where it all started. It was I mean, whether it was necessarily about kind of like playing with gender, like I suppose it was in a way, because a lot of my influences and inspirations were kind of like not male or masculine necessarily, at least at the beginning. But it was more just about kind of like getting to the crux of what I found inspirational in general. Like the things that I just found really interesting. And then being able to apply them to myself and like basically just kind of like using my body as like a place to put all of those ideas.
Can you give me an example of like what was an inspiration and how you brought that into life?
Oh, 100%. Like, I suppose in the creation of Lagoon and the initial stages, you know, thinking about things that are kind of blue, maybe kind of slightly like marine or alien looking, but also kind of like slightly classical in terms of like the jewelry that I would wear, like pearls and big like diamante chandelier earrings. To my mind, that was a mixture of influences like the artist Juliana Huxtable, who did an incredible self-portrait series where she was kind of green and blue and purple. So it was that. It was the villains from Sailor Moon. It was Pat McGrath's makeup for John Galliano's Dior in the early noughties. It was horror movie posters from the 50s and 60s that would reference the extreme kind of color lighting that would be used in the films, that kind of like schlocky B-movie style of lighting. Kind of like how you see, even though it's the 70s, but what you kind of see in Suspiria or Creepshow in the 80s. It was a whole, and Lee Bowery was kind of like a huge reference to me, who was like an amazing performance artist, costumier, makeup artist, a kind of a blueprint basically for so many people, because he truly in the 80s and 90s innovated to such an insane degree in terms of what was possible. Like took ideas that people had not really ever engaged with and did them effectively for the first time in a lot of ways. You know, he would like make a costume and talk about kind of like the different ways, the different body parts that want to be accentuated. And he was like, the only body part that people haven't accentuated is the stomach.
Oh.
So I'm gonna do a costume with a diving board coming off my chest.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
It's like these like truly innovative. And so that was. And so I was kind of looking at all of those and I was never interested in kind of like looking like a woman. Or looking particularly human. Because I was like, enough people do that already.
So you went and found that inspiration and created this new version based on these inspirations. So did it come out of like fantasy as well, that you wanted to just be a bit different?
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. It was just like I suppose it's a form of like pure escapism. And then the moment you create this finished look and you take it outside into the real world, like in a way reality is kind of altered the moment you kind of enter a physical space. Even if it's like it's like a local club or whatever with 150, 200 people, it's like the reality of the space is changed, because all of a sudden a total non-human entity is there playing music for you all to listen to. Like, what is this? It becomes cinematic. And like with the Boiler Room that ended up happening in whenever that was, 2022, it was like that, I suppose, was kind of like the crux of all of that work. Like,
I think that is 100% what I wanted to talk about, because I love how you did so much behind the camera as well, and the curation that you did. Can you tell me more? Because that is literally the definition of a multi-hyphenate. What you did with that Boiler Room.
No, for sure. Well, I was very, very lucky to do that Boiler Room. It was something that I'd mentioned to Amar, who is the incredible creative director of Boiler Room. And I'd kind of pitched them the idea of this show. He was like, yeah, incredible, let's do it. And yeah, and obviously with they had an amazing director, an amazing DOP. They brought in an incredible set designer, someone called Furman Ahmed, who, if you ever have the pleasure to work with Furman, you should. They're incredible. But yeah, it was just like, let me take all of these, like the initial Lagoon mood board and the mood board for Adrenalina are the same.
Wow. Okay.
You know, it's like the background visuals being inspired by Pipilotti Wrist's incredible video work, or the hair that I wore being a kind of like a direct inspired wig created by the amazing Truffle Pig wigs, but it was inspired by Paul Phoenix's hair from Tekken, a game that I've been playing since I was 6 years old.
Oh my gosh, wow.
So again, it was just like, it was pure creative direction, but all from that same kind of like, it was like, how do I put the DNA of Lagoon in every aspect of the show?
That's so interesting. Like the threads all come together
Yeah.
in that show. And how was that moment for you?
It was amazing to kind of look. It was amazing to look around, and I think the thing is that if you are a creative in any way, to go from having a list of ideas on paper and then to see every single one of them actually come to fruition exactly how you imagined it is like, you know, it's like alchemy. It's it's incredible. And so it was, you know, to be like smoking a spliff outside the club after the show with Kevin Aviance, whose music I'd been listening to since I was 19, and then Kevin headlines the show I put. It was just like, this is just insane. And the way she smoked that blunt as well. Have you ever seen in Hercules that bit where Hades smokes the cigar?
Oh yeah.
And it all just goes in one go. It's like I had the spliff and Kevin Aviance just went and then walked away as if it was nothing.
So it really was a moment. It was a moment in so many ways.
Yeah, it was so unbelievably affirming, and it was also a testament to my creative vision being one that other people could really enjoy and take seriously.
Yeah, because then in a way, like the way you did it, like even watching from the YouTube videos, because I sadly wasn't there, but you can really feel the fantasy and feel immersed, which I think is quite unique to a typical boiler room.
Yeah.
And so it was so beautiful to actually bring all of those elements together and create it didn't feel like in a way a DJ set. It felt like a show and something very special. Even
like the way they lit it, and like the, you know, I remember talking to the director about what lenses the DOP was going to use. It looked like an HBO special.
It's amazing.
It was incredible the way the way they captured the light and the way it kind of like glinted and glowed and like the way the light refracted.
It was really soft as well. Like it just glowed. Yeah, it worked really well. Yeah. Is there any instances when you've had challenge with just leaning in and bringing everything together? Because, you know, like in being an innovator, ideas aren't always accepted because they are innovative. So have you ever had that, and how have you kind of gone through that, or those obstacles?
100%. I think the thing which people get wrong, especially when you see anybody doing things considered to be successful or cool or whatever on Instagram, is that everybody just gets invited to do these opportunities. And the reality of the situation is that 90% of the things that I've achieved or the things that I've accomplished or done, I have asked for and harassed people for. And, you know, it's like with the boiler room and everything too, it was like, you know, I knocked on the door and was like, I really want to do this. Nobody approached me to do it. I was like, this is something I want to do. The same with the creative direction job that I have now. It's like, if I hadn't emailed every single person and spoken to every single person, like, do you know anyone? Are you looking for anyone? Blah, 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 blah. Like, I wasn't just like handed a job.
No. It's like taking back control and this like notion of being an architect of your own career.
Yeah.
Like you have to take responsibility.
You also have to be happy with hearing no.
Yeah. Which is hard.
Which is really hard.
And actually, do you find that the word no, like for me, it spurs me on? It's like, challenge.
Oh, 100.
Let's keep going here.
100%. I think I've always very much in my head had a I will prove you wrong
me too
mentality. But, you know, and I also think you've got to separate no from you're not good enough. People hear no and they hear you're bad at what you do. You're not good enough for this. This is, and it's like, especially now kind of working on the other side of the coin, or maybe just kind of having a broader understanding of how everything works. It's like, no is a huge variety of things.
Yeah.
The budget might have been snipped 2 days after they reached out for you for the email. The head of the department may have changed. They may have found a talent who was actually more aligned with the project that they wanted to do. They've reached out to 10 people and you were one of them, and it's unfortunate this time, but at least you're on their... It's like there are so many things at play here. What you've got to do is you've got to separate all of that mishigas and craziness from actually your own work and what you want to do.
Yeah.
So if you hear and you go, great, back to the drawing board, back to the grindstone, you keep it pumping and you keep it moving.
It's so interesting you say that, because you can make up so many stories in your own head.
Yeah.
Do you know when you get aired from an email and you're like, they hate me or they don't want to work with me, and then the imposter syndrome and the self inner critic just comes in, and it's moving away from that actually no is a no, not right now, I always say.
Yeah.
And if not, it's going to happen at some point. Keep it on that mood board, keep it on that goal list.
Yeah.
And you got to like kind of trust the process.
Also, I don't know, there are things that I was like so like, oh my God, if I don't do this with my life, I'm going to be a total failure. And then it's like time gives you so much more.
Yeah.
Like I used to have sleepless nights when I was 19 about like what my life was going to be like and all the things that I was going to achieve, like self-flagellating and beating myself up because I wasn't already this like abstract idea of kind of perfection. And now at 29, I'm like, babe, you should have chilled the fuck out and just enjoyed being 19.
I feel like that's 20s as well, isn't it? The pressure of just being a young person.
I'm looking forward to leaving them behind.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the 20s have been amazing, but it's also like I'm ready to like step into
the freeing of 30s. Everyone says that as well. Yes. How you just
you stop giving a shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm so here for that because I'm 28, so I can't wait for that moment.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this notion of a dream career and what most people are aspiring for, searching for. Like you spend a lot of your life figuring out what you want to do and answering the question, so what do you do? Where do you feel you are now? Like you are a freelancer, you're smashing the DJing, the music side. On that journey, where do you find yourself?
I honestly think that if you would have told me what I was doing now to my 19-year-old self or whatever, you would have had to have like slapped me twice. And
their jaw would be on the floor.
No, honestly, because like, you know, I am in so many ways kind of like doing everything that I always wanted to do, you know, being a creative director in music, and I'm currently a creative consultant at Warner Records.
Oh, wow.
And also work freelance for Sony too. And DJ, I still do my radio shows. I still do like the odd bit of kind of like hosting and presenting here and there. The like amazing people that I've had the pleasure and privilege to kind of like work with, it's like it's amazing. It's like it's truly the stuff of like everything that I dreamed of. You know, I am kind of living my dream career at the moment. And actually I did have a weird point where I was like, oh, like I've accomplished actually loads of things that I wanted to accomplish. And once I'd kind of realized that, I think I actually felt a bit like depressed because I was like, well, what do I do now? It's
because of that, like the gold medal syndrome, like you're there at the top and then it's like, where next? Yeah. And does that feel like, I guess, where's the future then for you? Where are you looking to just keep scaling the things that you love? Have you found those things and now it's just growing them, or is it actually evolving and moving into other things?
I think in a way the things that I've maybe succeeded in are the things that have maybe come to me a bit more naturally. And I do think that there is an argument for doing the things that you find harder. And I think that is what this next phase is going to be about. It's going to be about doing the things that you find more challenging, the things that you find intellectually kind of like a lot more like rigorous and a lot harder to kind of tackle. And that is really kind of like what I want to focus on and do.
Because that's what the best way to do it though is, as soon as you feel like you're there, is then to challenge and then go up that next mountain. Yeah. Because even now, like I'm like, should I train to be a coach even? And like that's like a 3-year mountain that I'd have to face. And I'm like, you know what? I need something to work towards, something exciting to do that can help more people or do more things to pursue that same destination and goal. Yeah. But it's like the journey will always change with that.
This is the thing. It's just like I sometimes worry that I'm lazy or like being lazy.
I would never see you as lazy.
Oh God. Well, I mean, again, it's like the demonic voices in my head. But sometimes I'm just like, no, you've really got to push yourself more.
Yeah.
Push yourself more. I've also just like, I've just, again, it's probably like my parents.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's my
Definitely.
parents being like, come on, you can do that.
Keep going.
Yeah, you
Keep
can
doing it.
It's like,
But then how does that typical week look like then when you are getting up and is it more of a 9 to 5? Because obviously DJing we know is not at all a 9 to 5.
Okay, so do you want to know typical week?
Typical week.
Okay, so typical week, especially since I started this year, typical week, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I go to the gym.
Hustle, okay.
Which is something that I've started doing this year. Hence that, which is why I'm wearing these. I come back and then I've been doing 4 days a week at Warner just for January. So I will probably have a shoot one day in the week. The other 3 days I'll be in the office. I'll go to the office all day. I'll come back. Then on Friday, I'll have a gig. Night, I'll have a gig. Saturday night, I'll have a gig. Sunday, I'll rest. So, and then on top of all of that as well, I'll also be working on freelance projects outside of where I am at Warner.
Okay.
I might also have a radio show at Foundation FM that week, or a pre-record. I'll be prepping. I'll be listening to music and prepping for this tour that I'm about to go on in New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah.
I'll watch at least one movie, usually a piece of
Love
shit
that.
90s thriller, because that's my favourite
Yeah.
genre.
That's the comfort.
It's
Okay.
the ultimate comfort. And then Sunday I will probably be cooking.
That's a beautiful Sunday.
Yeah.
So Sundays are wholesome.
Sundays are wholesome. Sunday is usually about roasting a whole chicken, taking all the meat off the chicken, then making stock from the chicken, which I can then use as soup for the rest of the week.
Yes. We do that with ramen. We make a banging ramen out of that carcass.
I need
So
just like
good.
one day
Yeah, to yourself. Yeah.
where I can cook all day.
And then you have like Monday to Friday, you are kind of focusing on the freelance.
Yeah.
But then you go straight, actually, you're working Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
So Sunday is your complete day where you will never do any work. Do you have that time to avoid burnout and look after yourself?
No.
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 I appreciate
not
the honesty.
always. No, I'm not gonna lie. What would be the point in lying? It's like, no. I have really had moments where I've felt close to being like, oh my God, I can't breathe because I've got so much work to do.
Okay.
And that's not healthy.
Yeah.
But also, again, I've got a voice in the back of my mind saying, you got to work, 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 you got to do more, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do. And to be fair, I've been in that mode for quite some time. I'm now, like I said, in this process where I'm in a kind of a bit of a reevaluation and kind of going, what does the next chapter look like? What does the next phase look like? What's really important to you? Like, who do you really want to speak to? Who do you really want to learn from? Who do you want to work with? How do you want to work? And so that's actually quite exciting.
It's like a nice self-reflection in a way, ready for the year.
Yeah, and I'm going to go on this tour and play some really exciting gigs, and then in the midst of all of that, going to have a kind of a serious think about, about what the rest of the year looks like and all the things I want to do.
Amazing. I think that is a multi-hyphenate mindset. Common theme that I'm seeing though is this: I have to go, do all the time. But then,
what are we running from?
That's the question,
what are we
right?
running from?
Is
That's
there
the
a
question.
trauma? Or is there an experience in your childhood? I don't know.
What happened to you when you were younger that made you such a fucking weirdo?
I can see it though. It was a school thing. I went to a grammar school, and a girls' grammar school, Bs were not allowed if you got a B.
Oh my God.
I'm not even joking. If anyone got a B, it was like you were looked down upon.
Jesus.
So I was the AEA style girly. I had to be.
Yeah.
And I was not naturally as intelligent as my peers. So I really had to work for it. And then even doing the law degree, now I realize looking back, I did it so I could prove that I could do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just doing it.
Yeah.
So I find that the go and like excelling at everything I do, it comes from school.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we had like a weird point system at our school for GCSEs.
Yeah.
So like an A star was 3 points, an A was 2 points, and a B was 1 point, and you needed minimum 18 points, which is 9 Bs.
Oh, okay. So there was that.
So if you didn't get 9
level.
Bs or the equivalent of, you wouldn't get in.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does that drive come from there, do you think? Or just your personal drive of wanting to go?
It's definitely part of it. My school was very rigorous in a lot of ways, but it was also my parents. It was also my parents and kind of like their backgrounds, maybe in comparison to mine. They were both, you know, kind of like from up north and kind of like state educated. I don't think my dad has any qualifications because he was dyslexic at school, and they were like, "Oh, you're like a dyslexic kid in the 80s in rural Bolton. You're stupid." It's like, he's not stupid. He was just dyslexic. So I think when they moved to London, they've been able to do what they do, and so I think the idea of me doing anything but the top, they were just like, "No,
Wow,
you gotta go. You gotta do it.
You gotta do it."
Yeah, and to be fair, it's more of a blessing than a curse.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
I think I'd hate to be lazy. So this is, if anything, I actually thrive off drive and doing things and being busy. But with now, I'm all about resting, good rest as well.
Yes.
Because what are you going to do on an empty tank? Is what I say.
No, for sure. I'm like, you know, I'm trying to, you know. I was saying to my housemates yesterday, because like I said, we're getting up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym. And I was like, oh, guys, you know what? I'm going to, instead of going to the gym and then recording this podcast today, you know, I'm going to have a bit of a line. I'm going to get up at 8:30.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, a line for you is
8:30.
You are fucked in the head. But, you know.
But you've challenged yourself, and that's amazing. And
Right.
I'm excited to hear what the future brings.
Me too.
I want to hear how anyone can keep in touch with you on social media.
Yes. So if you want to follow me, get in touch with me in any shape or form, my Instagram is at Lagoon_Femshayma. Femshayma spelt Femshayma.
Get it right.
Get it right. Not Femshire. Not Feshmire.
My dyslexia would do that though. That's the thing. I was really scared about reading it out.
The number of like, you know, those emails that you get from like jewelry companies that don't exist because they're trying to steal your bank details, and they're like, Lagoon Feshmire, we'd love to send you £3,000 worth of gold jewelry. Please send your bank details. Why do you need my bank details to send me jewelry? Anyway, whatever. But it's like, it's Femshayma.
They tried. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
That was amazing. I love it. Now let's do